it would be remiss for us to not look at the glaring obvious elephant in the room, that if we are really serious about reform of our NHS services, we need to look at how social care is included and taken along with that, so that we can ensure that our spaces and our communities, so if we're moving away from hospital-based care to community-based care, which in Scotland we are doing, I'm talking just sort of the way the narrative is at the moment, that we need to be serious about making sure that the social care is there as well. And we hear lots of very good stories in Renfrewshire. We're very lucky in Renfrewshire that we actually have better services than a lot of areas. And I think that there are many members of staff who are the ones that go above and beyond. And I put my thanks on record to them, because they don't do it for the glory, they do it because it's the right thing to do. So I just wanted to sort of say that we need to remember that the Feely report gave some really good recommendations, and we don't need another report, we need action. So thank you very much for the report, and just obviously just reinforcing the support to our social services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So John, thank you for your report today. And I know it's difficult. Ian made a good point there about us never being able to get around all of the members of staff and get to know them and thank them. And I suppose to an extent, you know, we will never be able to do that. But if you can take back our thanks to as many members of staff as you can, and let them know how much we appreciate them, because we really, really do appreciate them. And we know they go above and beyond their terms of service, because they just, they feel as if it's their calling, you know. And these are some tremendous people that are working in our services. So thank them very much from us. So thanks for all your comments, and we agree with the report then. And that moves us on to the Renfrewshire Community Protection Chief Officers Group Annual Report 23 to 24. Do we have any questions on that? No? Agree with the report then? Thank you. Item 7 is the Accounts Commission Section 102 follow-up report, school accommodation for Dargavel Village. I want to bring in the Chief Executive, Alan, to say a few words about this before we take any questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Just like to add maybe just a few comments just to complement the report. Members will recall the original Section 102 report was considered by the Accounts Commission in January of this year, and the follow-up audit work that has been progressed over the past 6 to 8 months is focused on 5 areas summarised in Section 3.3 of the covering report, and the report from the Controller of Audit in relation to the 5 areas overall is positive, and the Controller of Audit in her report to the Commissioners confirmed that she was satisfied the actions been taken by the Council in response to each of the 5 areas are timely and appropriate. As detailed in the proposed actions and responses, officers will continue to keep the local audit team informed of the progress across each of these 5 areas as we move forward through the normal audit cycle, and also as part of the planned best value audit process, which has been confirmed will be pushed back by the Accounts Commission until spring 2025. Members will note that in the covering report there was some unexpected attention given to financial management issues during the Commissioner's consideration at their meeting of the Controller of Audit's report, and it was obviously surprising given this did not form part of the follow-up work the auditor was asked to cover, and that that particular issue Commissioners had been provided with assurances through previous reports from the auditor. However, what I can say to members is that this issue was further explored with commissioners, by myself and other officers and the leader in relation to the visit by some of the commissioners, which is a normal part of the Section 102 process that the Commission follow when they look to have a visit to the Council to discuss the findings from the Commission, and they have been provided with reassurance during that visit and those discussions that the Council is fully and transparently handling the financial impact of the Dargavel situation through its financial management and financial planning arrangements, and they've been provided with that reassurance. So what I would say is that subject to consideration of this report by members this morning, this would bring to an end the Commission's consideration of the Dargavel Section 102 process. And what I would certainly say from my own point of view, the Commission's interest in the scrutiny of how the Council has handled the Dargavel situation has been welcomed, and I think the findings through both Section 102 reports I think provides welcome independent reassurance of how the Council has handled the situation since the issues emerged, and provides reassurance not just to members in the Chamber but to communities and members of the public that the Council continues to positively, proactively and in a timely manner take forward appropriate actions in response to the situation. So I'd just like to stop there, Provost, and happy to take any subsequent questions.
Yeah, we have a couple of questions, I think. What are questions? Councillor Jill Graham.
Thank you very much, Provost. Yeah, I have a comment, and I also do have a question.
Yeah.
We fully support the Accounts Commission's stance and recommendations, and we recognise and welcome the progress that has been made. However, it is troubling that the Commission still has concerns about the Council's financial transparency and governance. The range of actions required by the Commission is pretty comprehensive and highlights concerns around leadership and organisational culture, as evidenced by its ongoing interest in the culture of the Council. I suppose, given the Council's catastrophic lack of oversight and the subsequent squandering of millions in public money as a result of the Dargavel debacle, it should come as no surprise that the Accounts Commission continues to question and to scrutinise how the Council functions. After all, that's its job. I'm really not sure how wise it is to produce a report which at points questions some of the decisions of the Accounts Commission, when it has every right to highlight concerns and ask questions, and it will be carrying out a best value audit of Renfrewshire Council, the timing of which is imminent and was brought forward 2 years because the Accounts Commission clearly had serious concerns about the Council on a number of fronts. I've raised queries with officers prior to today, but I do have one further question to ask at this point. At the bottom of page 93, I welcome the fact that the Council has concluded its review of risk management and has largely completed the actions arising from its review of governance arrangements. Could someone please explain what actions are still required to be completed? Thank you, Provost.
Okay. Alan, do you want to come in just now, or do you want to wait until we have another couple of questions? Yeah, I'll bring the other speakers in then, and Councillor James McLaren, all the questions together.
Okay, thank you, Provost. And yes, I have some comments to make and some questions you'll be glad to hear, I'm sure. So on page 95, 373, it says that the cost to address this error for the Council will be significant and is currently estimated at up to 75 million in gross capital costs for building a second primary school in Dargavel and building a larger than planned secondary school extension. School transport's been identified earlier in this meeting as a big cost to the Council going forward. Can the Chief Executive please give us the cost now and the upcoming cost to bus children from Bishopton and Dargavel to Park Mains High School at the highest likely intake for this area? And wouldn't this cost be better invested in a new high school for Bishopton? And moving on page 112, paragraph 32, David Bowles suggested that the council carry out an independent review into the handling of specific planning applications related to Dargavel. And then further down in that paragraph, the council has shared details of this work with auditors, but has not been able to provide a contemporaneous written report of the scope or findings of its additional work. And it goes on, I would have expected officers to have kept a written record of decision making on such a serious matter. So my question is, where is this written report? Planning seemed to have let Bishopton and Dargavel down badly, particularly really the watering down of the section 75, despite doubling the number of houses. Do we have a written report that can be shared? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor.
And if it can't be shared, why not?
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Eddie Devine.
Thanks, Provost. Basically to agree with what James McLaren has just said, and I'm surprised that you're surprised that in saying it's 3.73, it was surprising and disappointing that the Commission have chosen to set out findings on an area they did not ask the Controller. Why did they not ask the Controller to advise on this? And it says here, as James has said, £75 million. We've got expected new borrowing costs, and it will add £4 million per annum in additional revenue to cost to meet the interest payments. And it goes on and on and on. It's just money after money. So I'm surprised that you're surprised that somebody would comment on that. I think they actually should. Maybe it's the questions, we were asking closed questions where you didn't want them to look into this. Cheers.
I don't think that's the case, Councillor Devine. But we'll let the Chief Executive answer your claim. It's more of a claim than a comment, I would say. Councillor Ian Nicholson.
Thanks, Provost. It's just it's a bit more clarity on Councillor Graham made a comment. I think I heard right, Councillor Graham was saying we shouldn't question or challenge the Accounting Commission's findings. But unfortunately for Councillor Graham, that's part of the process. Part of the process is that the auditors and the commissioners produce their report, they engage with the council officers, they engage with elected members, they then produce what they believe to be the facts of the case based upon the information they have. Then the council, which we're entitled to do, is go back to them and say that bit's not correct, that bit's not correct, and that bit's not correct. And then the commissioners can either accept that, amend it, change it or not, and then we're still entitled at the end of the day to be able to say, as part of our response to their findings, this is where we believe the information might be incorrect, might be an error, etc., etc. So it's just for a bit of clarification around the room here, is the process allows the council to be able to put its own point of view over with regards to how we've handled the issue of Dargavel and how we've changed that process, how we've changed the culture within, particularly within the officer group, which we all know is where this primarily lies with regard to the decision about Dargavel. And again, as I say, the report quite clearly says in the summary from the Accounting Commission quickly says historic failures. And I know there's some members around here who seem to think this all happened last week, past Tuesday. It didn't. It's historic. We inherited this issue. We as a council dealt with it the best way we can. And I'll repeat this ad infinitum. Our focus was always on dealing with the historical issues and then getting schools and places in place for the children who need them. That was the key primary focus of this administration, was to get that process going as well, along with dealing with how did it happen, why did it happen, can we make sure it never happens again. Now, I can't sit here and say it'll never happen again for any council, nobody can. Things happen. This is one of those things that happened. I had a huge financial cost to the council, and we have to sort of deal with it and go on with it, as I say. But just to correct Councillor Graham, as I said before, the process is robust. It goes back and forward over a number of period of months, changes occurring all the time. And if anybody wants to go and look at the Accounts Commission hearings, they're online as well. This council did, I think, an excellent job in engaging with the process. Not running away from it, not hiding from it, but engaging with it. And we're accepting the recommendations from the Accounts Commission, but it doesn't mean to say we have to accept every single thing they say. We're entitled to an opinion, a view on it as well, and they accept that as well. So even the meeting we had with them a week or so back, they accepted the points we're making there. But as I say, that's part of the process. So it's just for clarity for the members in the chamber here today. Provost, thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. I'm going to let the Chief Executive come back in. You might need to Don't know whether you need to defer any other points to other officers, Alan, but just let me know if you do have to, Alan.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, on Councillor Graham's point in relation to the review of risk management and governance, what I would say is that the Accounts Commission report and the report from the Controller of Audit was obviously at a point in time when she writes her report. What I would say is that members recall it was originally meant to be considered by the Commission in June, and that was delayed because of the election. So much of the fieldwork was conducted probably March, April time, when some of the actions that were being taken forward in relation to risk management and review of governance were still progressing. Those have been more or less effectively complete now at this point in time, and that's been reported through the Audit Risk and Scrutiny Board, Councillor Graham. So there is always, as always with an audit report, a line in the sand drawn in terms of when the auditors report their findings and they'll report what the position is at that particular point in time. In relation to Councillor McLaren's point and picking up travel costs, a number of points I would make in relation to that. Of course, and this was one of the points that we discussed with the Commission, is that the costs that will emerge in relation to pupils in relation to Dargavel will emerge over probably the next 10 years as the development is completed, and that is and will continue to be built into our long-term financial plans. At the moment, once the expected peak is reached, post-completion of the full development, the transport costs, of course, will be driven by the costs that are existing at that point in time in relation to pupil transport. And you've heard from the Director of Finance and Resources today about some of the pressures within that particular sector, but they're estimated at around £800,000 based on our last assessment at the peak. You picked up the issue about whether that should be balanced against provision of an additional secondary school to the school estate. What would say is that there is obviously much wider range of costs that need to be considered in relation to that type of option. But that option was set out in detail at the August 2023 Education and Children's Services Policy Board, which considered the wider costs associated with that type of option, both in financial terms, but also the impact that that type of option would have in the school estate. So I would refer you back to that report to assist you in your understanding on that particular issue. In relation to the contemporaneous note reference, David Bowles, as part of his review, I had asked as part of his review that he provided me with a private confidential report on any issues as he progressed his review in relation to wider officers as he progressed his review. As part of that report, he did flag a concern in relation to some planning aspects. What I would say in relation to David's review is that he did not look in great detail about the planning process itself, and that was not a key part of his remit, albeit that he could have gone there had he wished, because he did under his appointed remit have flexibility to take that review wherever he wished. He had expressed some concerns as part of that report to me in relation to the handling of a number of smaller planning applications associated with Dargavel Village, in addition to the three major planning applications. And David's concerns were based on a premise and an understanding that he held in relation to those planning applications. whilst David was progressing his review over a 6 to 7 month period, obviously officers at the council were progressing other work at the same time, and there was significant work progressed by officers unpicking the historical planning process at Dargavel to fully understand it, because what you may recall in terms of David's report, some of the uncertainty that came through in relation to consented housing units. So at the point I received that report from David, I had a full understanding of that historical planning process, and indeed had a full understanding based on the work completed by officers and some external legal advice that I'd taken in relation to the planning process, that the understanding that David held was incorrect, factually incorrect, and therefore there was no basis to the concern that he was just flagging up to me in that report. So I was fully content. There was no requirement to progress any of the work that David had suggested that I might consider. What the auditor was flagging is at that point I didn't summarise that in that decision in a short record for the file. So when the auditor asked about that particular aspect of the report, I provided them with a full record of why I had not progressed what David had suggested. They were provided with the full details of the work that had been completed, the associated documentation and the external legal advice. So the issue they're highlighting is that note wasn't just summarised at that point in time that I took the decision. And I recognise the point they're making and it's accepted, but I'm fully comfortable that I made the correct decision, and I was able to fully document to them why that decision was taken. In relation to the final point, I think it was Councillor Devine, and just on the issue of the points made by the Commission, the Council leaders already made the point. I fully respect the rights of the Commissioners to express a concern and a view. That's their role, and I think I said in my introduction I fully welcome the scrutiny that they have brought to the process. In the report I did express my disappointment because this aspect had been considered and explained in both previous Section 102 report and the annual audit report from the external auditor last year, and indeed during the course of the public part of the meeting, which I was able to observe, was covered off by the external auditor and the controller of audit in trying to provide reassurance. So what I was disappointed at was the manner in which the Commissioners positioned their findings. I think it's wholly appropriate that the Commission continue to hold an interest in how the Council is managing this unexpected additional cost as part of the wider financial challenge that the Council is having to address, which Alistair obviously outlined in some detail earlier. I think that's entirely appropriate. What I was disappointed is that they chose to express publicly that they did not feel that that had been transparently reported. It's been reported through a number of routes, both through the Education and Children's Services Policy Board and through Alistair's financial updates over the course. And I think in the discussion with the Commissioners, as I said, that point was explored, and I think there is an acceptance of that. But notwithstanding, as I said, and as is outlined in the report, we will continue to work closely with the local audit team to provide full transparency of how the Council is handling addressing the additional cost that will come through as the additional school is constructed, Park Mains Extension is constructed, and indeed as the school pupils emerge over the next 10 years or so from the completion of the development. So hopefully that provides some reassurance to members on those specific questions.
Okay, do we have any further questions that have not been covered?
Thank you, Provost.
McLaren.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah. So I thank the Chief Executive for his reply. If my understanding is correct, then a written record of decision-making by officers was kept, and therefore I request that this document be shared with members, as I'm sure we would all like to see that. Thank you.
Provost, I'm more than happy to provide all elected members with a summary of that particular matter and the basis of the decision that was taken. Quite happy to share that with all members.
I'm sure that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor McLaren. Okay, can we accept and agree the report then? That moves us on to Park Lane Developments, Renfrewshire, LLP. Moves us on from a not very good outcome to what I consider a good outcome. Park Lane Developments, I can't believe we're at this stage. Some of the councillors that are still here after all these years will remember when this started, and it's hard to believe so many years have passed since then. Councillor Nicholson, did you want to say a few words?
Thanks, Provost. No, I was just going to come in and say, not let this pass without comment, because for a number of reasons. I remember the time I was the convener economic development and planning, and this is one of the ones that came across my desk at this particular site, along with regeneration of Linwood and Walnut, and with Tesco, etc. at the time. And just for members, I mean, bear in mind this was a year after the economic crash in 2008, and I think this is a classic example of where you have a key site in a town centre, and at the time we were trying to increase footfall in Paisley as well, not have a derelict site on our hands with Arnott's, etc. And then we had the tenemental properties around Inkle Street, which were in a dire strait. They eventually burnt out, and we acquired that as part of the site as well. But I think my key message here today is to demonstrate how fundamentally local authorities are there to do things that the private sector can't at times. This is a key example of where something we take the risk on it with partners, and we delivered on it. And I mean that in the sense of the council. And that happens a lot of the times with properties and sites that just can't be, the private sector, the market just can't deal with them. And it goes without saying at times people just don't recognise the fact of the role that the local authorities can have in bringing some of these sites right back to the front. As I say, so I want to thank the officers for over the past 8 years, 10 years, whatever, for all their work on this one, and to bring it home is the way I see it. And just in a passing point, I always sit at the lights just before you go into turn the corner. I think it's Lawn Street or God Street. I keep forgetting the name of the streets, and to see people leaning out their balconies, and flower pots hanging there, and at times I've sort of wondered, washing hanging out and stuff like that. I think it's fantastic. That tells me how there's a community developed out of that site as well, and they're contributing to the area of the whole town centre. So as I say, for me, that's seeing people's homes there is a key fact as well. But also the fact of the restaurant and the pendulum and everything that's came about with it is fantastic. So I just want to make those points, Provost, and really it's about the key message is that local authorities can and do deliver key projects into the areas which supports housing, supports listed buildings, supports employment, all the rest of it. And as I say, I just didn't want it to go out past with my thanks for that. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments, Councillor. Councillor Ian McMillan.
I was just going to echo Councillor Nicholson's thoughts there. This is, it's like you, Councillor Cameron. I was kind of hanging about here at the time when this all came up, and it's been kind of managed, if you like, by both SNP and Labour administrations, and I think both parties can be proud of the part they've played in this. Let's face it, it was a poor site, and to see how it's developed over the years is absolutely incredible. I had to more than often either walk along that way or certainly drive home, and you see it. I think it's absolutely terrific. And I know we all hark back to the halcyon days of Paisley and Paisley High Street and the Arnott's and getting up in the lift and all the rest of it, the Arnott's store. But times have moved on, and I think it's absolutely terrific. And Councillor Nicholson's right. Where the private sector maybe can't manage these things, the public sector can step in, and I think that we in Renfrewshire Council can hold our heads up very, very high, and it's been a terrific project. Hopefully it's not the last project, and there'll be other projects in the pipeline in years to come, but I think as we draw this to a conclusion, it's certainly a job well done.
Yeah, agree. Councillor McNaughton. John?
Thank you, Provost. I very much welcome this report and support the recommendations. This has been a tremendous success story for regeneration of town centres, and in my ward, it has brought hundreds of new houses to the town centre in a former derelict site. Just a couple of questions. In paragraph 3.6, it refers to 2 areas to be held in perpetuity. If I could just have details of those, not necessarily just now, but at some stage in the future. And just in terms of the report clearly outlines a lot of the benefits, the social benefits, the jobs, etc., that were brought through this. As part of the LLP, did the council actually make any money from it? Was my other question. Not that that was the primary purpose. I also think that this element of partnership, where the council takes on a risk element, has proven greatly successful and can maybe be repeated in other schemes. I'm thinking of the Paisley Centre, and I think this is a tremendous example, and we should learn from that and continue to push forward the regeneration. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McNaughton. I'll let somebody answer your questions when we've heard from Bruce. Councillor McFarlane. Thanks, Provost. Yeah, like my colleagues there, I don't think we could let this item go without commenting on it and welcoming it. And I do remember the old Arnott's derelict site as well, not quite the lift, Councillor McMillan, but I do remember it being very derelict. I think as Paisley councillors, a lot of us will realise that one of the biggest concerns we'll get is the town centre. Where's the footfall? They'll talk about the previous days. My idea has always been that by having more people living and working in the town centre, will drive the businesses back into the area, and I think this has been a great example of what can be achieved. Yeah, I think it's just a part in a bigger picture, and repopulating the town centre, and hopefully that will help with its regeneration. That's the plan anyway. So thanks for all your comments, they're very welcome. Can we agree the report then? Moves us on to item 9. Following this item, we'll have a short break, 10 minutes before we start on the motions. Governance arrangements. Can we agree the report? Oh, sorry, Councillor Janice McDonald.
I've got just a question of clarification actually on page 146 and 3.4. I'm going to take, but it talks about equipment, and I just wondered if that included vehicles, because I'd be particularly keen if we could maybe be looking at how some of our vehicles could enable community transport development.
Okay, page 146. Yeah, you want to come in, Mark?
Thank you, Provost. To be frank, Councillor McDonald, I hadn't considered the question of vehicles at all when we're talking about this, but equipment would cover general terms. I think the reality with our vehicles is they're likely to have a commercial value. So even when they're second-hand, we could sell on. What we more had in mind was things such as furniture, potentially ICT equipment like screens, those sort of matters. And the matter which particularly brought this to our attention, as members will know, we moved the social work staff out of Abbey House because the lease was ending, brought them into this building. There was a substantial amount of furniture which was far newer than some of the stuff in the HQ. So that's been deployed in this building. But we're then left with a substantial amount of furniture which is we no longer have a requirement for, which is still in reasonable condition, could be used by third parties, and we'd absolutely no mechanism for passing it on. So essentially, we'd either have gone to recycling or simply to landfill. We were keen to avoid that, and that's why we put this in place. But it has been drawn widely so that it would be any equipment, and I think that could include vehicles. But as I say, I think in reality, it's likely that vehicles would have a resale value that the council would be expected to realise.
Okay, Councillor McDonald. Are you okay with that explanation? Okay, thank you. Okay, can we agree the report, please? Can I just say, John, I express my sincere apologies. You did ask 2 questions on the Park Lane development item. That was item 8. And I didn't bring anyone in to answer those. Would you mind if I just get an officer to send you the information, and all of the other councillors too? Are you happy with that? Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll have a short break, 10 minutes. see you back here for the motions. I take it nobody's turned up from...